bill ourselves as the leading provider of cloud and on-premise based talent management solutions. We build them around a social substrate. We have them available in mobile, and of course we sell across the globe in about 37 countries, and we sell into BFSI, into manufacturing, into IT, ITDS, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, government, as the case may be. And we span customers that may be as small as 30 to 40 users, all the way up to people up in the US Army, which is 2 million. So we scale at every level. So with that, let me get into the technologies. Next time I bring my own laptop. The context in which I'm speaking is twofold today. Because we sell such solutions, we get the opportunity to interact with a lot of the best customers around the world that are certainly looking to adopt technology. We find ourselves driven by a number of companies that are on the forefront. Fortunately, at least one of them is sitting here. Kali, of course, has been using our solutions, Agent Prince, for a while, which means that I can't lie too much because he'll sort of call me on it in the next session. So the other is we're actually a consumer of our own software. And near the end of my few minutes, I want to talk about a little bit of what the use of these technologies has done for us. Remember, we've been in the business of building learning management systems. We invented the term 17 years ago. But as we move to embedding social technologies in the software, we've seen some dramatic changes in how the organization uses it. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm both a purveyor of software, but I'm also a consumer of the same, and we've been through a similar journey of transformation, and it's been interesting. It's been led by the people, not by management. It was led from the bottom up, and I'll talk about that just a little bit. Let me skip these. When we look at the learning problem, and we talk about social or mobile or what have you, I think some basic things to think about. What is the problem that we're dealing with? Our business as CLOs, as learning leaders, is to allow our organizations to do better by making sure our people are more ready in whatever dimension it may be, whether it's time to competence, whether it's ability, whether it's capability, whether it's career development, as the case may be. And we try to take advantage of every tool that's out there. So I think our first thesis is very straightforward. We can only do what our tools allow us to do. Before the advent of social media and mobile and other elements, the tool set we largely had used to be classroom training in staff colleges, followed by now some e-learning over the last decade, and WBTs and self-paced learning, which has its own drawbacks. The problem with both of those is, are people really getting what they need? Are we trying to stuff too much down their throats? Are they really absorbing all the stuff that we're sending them? If we only had classroom-led training, we have to bring everybody into a staff college, take them out of the field for 3 weeks, send them somewhere, house them, board them, run them through training. Well, you know what? We want to teach them as much as we can, as fast as we can, and stuff them full. The problem with that is when they actually have to show up 6 months later in front of a customer, how much do they remember? I don't know. Retention is a problem. Even the best student will only retain so much, and the more time goes by, the more the problem exacerbates itself. The other problem that we've had is the other one. Do we have people alone in a crowd? Is our learning really reaching everybody it needs to? Are there people being left alone in the corners of the organization where they don't even know where to ask for help, where to get the knowledge they need? Maybe the induction training covered certain dimensions, but did it cover and really make them ready for their jobs? And those are the problems that I think have been limited by the tool sets at our disposal. But we're in a very fortunate place where the world has changed around us in a number of dimensions. New tool sets have become available to us. More importantly, the people themselves have changed. We've all been through a transformation the last 5-7 years. Just 6-7 years ago, if we were talking to customers in India and prospects in India or anywhere in the world for that matter, the conversation of will my people take to e-learning would always come up. Will they even learn online? They're not used to it. They don't have computers on their desktop. Today we're sitting here in an audience that is online, outside this room. Everybody has a mobile device in their pocket that allows them to access anything in the world. Everybody's got WhatsApp on, or BBM on, or Facebook on, or what have you. We're all conditioned to consume YouTube content. We go online, we search for what we need, and we're already ready. So we're all global, we're connected, we're mobile, and yes, our workforces have changed. Some of us have gotten older, whether we like it or not, and a whole bunch of younger folks that have grown up on these technologies have already entered. And so our workforce is conditioned, and in fact they're demanding that we get on with it, because reading dry HTML content that goes by a page at a time is just not going to cut it. And heck man, who's got time to learn all that much? When I want to cook something today, if I want to go fry an egg, I go to YouTube, watch the 30-second video and do it. I don't go buy a whole book, flip through the right way to make an egg, read the introduction and what have you, and then take a test at the end. I just don't do that anymore. I just take what I want. Information knowledge is more accessible than ever. It's available on the internet. We don't have to make all of the content. Heck, the US Army says, man, I don't have to build every one of my courses myself. If I genuinely have to teach a soldier to fry an egg, you know what? YouTube is just fine. So people are starting to blend public and private sources to build up the curricula that they want as quickly as they want. And of course, mobile and real-time technologies take away the issues that we all used to have with connectivity and distance. Can it be used for every single thing? No, as we heard in previous sessions. But suddenly, these things are available, they're tied to you, they're in your pocket, therefore you have access. You just have to figure out what is the right piece to provide here that would make sense for people. So when you have this much change, and we've seen also, that a very large number of companies around the world, this is a McKinsey survey, almost 83% of companies are using some sort of social technology. There's all sorts of technologies are in place in companies, sometimes 6 or 7 of them, and they've been in place for a while. These are not brand new anymore. But the question then really becomes, and I'll skip the definition, Kavita's already provided a nice one. When we look at the learning problem, when we look at learning and development, what are we to do with this tool set? What does this tool set enable or make possible that wasn't possible before? And what do we have to keep in mind about what can be done? Or what do we have, what are the limitations of the bits of this thing? Our arsenal grew. Our arsenal, as you correctly pointed out, didn't get replaced by one thing or another. Stuff available to us has grown. The contention is that just about 10% of the learning that happens in an organization happens through formal channels. Whether it's staff colleges, whether it's online e-learning, whether it's the certification deadline where everybody in that 1 week has to stuff everything through, this is all that it covers. Just about the most essential bits of learning get done in a formal fashion. That's what we're currently been focused on. But as we start using these technologies, the first stage of usage that we've seen that other folks have sort of written about now formally, because these technologies have been in existence for a while, are the initial communities of practice, the blogs, the groups, where the learning experience is extended beyond not just the classroom, but the calendar of the classroom. So the class happened, but there's a community of practice that continues. People have somewhere to come back and ask questions for a while. People continue to talk to each other. The students interact. They interact with the instructor. They interact with each other. They interact with the students who took the class earlier. So these sorts of things, beginning to locate experts, beginning to rate content so better ones float up, are all techniques that have been in use for a bit. Kavita obviously talked about the same things. A number of these pieces are in use. But what they're really doing is a first stage. They're extending the class experience and the classroom experience. They're extending the reach of learning into a longer period and beginning to make it continuous. But we think that 70% of the learning that happens in the organization still happens through on-the-job experiences. It happens when people learn on the job, talking to each other, being shown how, or ask a question. And we're not part of that. And these technologies are now beginning to, and have been already enabling this stuff. We saw a little bit of that with the blog that you have in place already. But more and more, the tooling that has been used for other purposes in other parts of the organization are being brought to bear. People are going outside to a Facebook or a LinkedIn if we didn't provide them the groups. If we didn't provide them the knowledge bases, they go create a base camp. If we didn't provide them the real-time collaboration tools, they will use online resources, as the case may be. So we just lose the information. More importantly, as learning departments, we are not part of the conversation. And so I think the main thing that this tooling brings us now is the ability to start tapping into that 70% that was simply impossible before. We were too overwhelmed with the task of dealing with the first 30. We were trying to build the best content. But you know what? Our world has changed. We can actually assemble the best content. Heck, even better, we can co-opt all of our learners to produce the content for us on the fly. Because somebody, a subject matter expert, holding an online Saba meeting or a WebEx session and recording that session and having it available in a place, you know what, that content is just good enough. And it's just in time, and it's fresh, and it's delivered by the expert, not by us trying to understand it and regurgitate it. So suddenly, we have the ability to produce and capture learning content that is fresh, that is expert-led, that is delivered by the people that have built it or know it. We can co-opt that. Second, as you pointed out, we can cross organizational boundaries freely. The technologies allow us to do so. The value of the content, its relevance can be rated by the people that are consuming it. We don't have to run surveys, they're rating it on the fly. The best content bubbles up, the worst content dies. And it's visible. We don't have to expend large amounts of money building useless content that nobody likes. Where it needs to be formalized, the information is available, the sources are available, we can capture it. So suddenly the ability to tap into that 70%, to understand what people are trying to teach themselves that we are not yet teaching them, is possible. Then to codify and formalize some elements of that, we now have the database and the visibility available, and I think that's what these technologies begin to do for us. So when we look at the pieces that make up social solutions today, the technologies that are on offer today provide integrated platforms that first begin by saying people need to connect as they are used to connecting on a Facebook or what have you. There are activity streams, there are walls, there are tweets, there are followers and following. People can track each other's blogs, people can see what's going on. But that's the substrate tooling. That's the world we live in. That's how people operate. Well, we need any system that they operate in must have that basic tooling. And into that gets inserted organized, groups and communities that allow relevant groups to form and connect freely. They don't have to follow organizational boundaries, but they can. People can group themselves in as appropriate to their projects, their product launches, their marketing initiatives, their team and developmental activities, as the case may be, and the relevant communities and groups become natural places for people to go in and look to ask questions, get answers, contribute content, teach people, learn, and also consume the formal content that we produce. And more interestingly, because we can see it, that's where it gets rated by the most relevant audiences. And of course, the real-time capabilities built into these systems and the mobile delivery allows them to be utilized anywhere and to capture everything that goes on. Nothing gets lost. It's all available to us. So when we look at social learning environments and we step back and say, what are the key things that you start thinking about? What becomes possible? What can you now do that you couldn't do before, or what do you have to think about? Few things stick out. Yes, these systems have to be personalized and learner-centric. People learn differently, people have different needs, and people have different needs at different points in time. When I enter a company, I do need an induction training of some sort, but that that induction training may take different forms today. I used to have to go to induction training for 3 weeks. Maybe a week is good enough for me now, followed by the right policies, procedures and stuff always available, easily bookmarked at my fingertips anytime I want. When I need them, I can look them up. These systems allow you to not only provide certainly formal learning, they allow you to group people, and the people can group themselves and manage themselves. So they can certainly deliver all of this on mobile platforms. Yes, we can use more media than we used to before. Video is a very, very important format that is being used in companies now, and certainly real-time collaboration is critical. People can do ideas. Ideation can be done online, idea exchanges can be done online, and certainly experts can be located so that you can follow them. So you can follow them, you can ask them questions, you can chat with them. Hell, you can have a meeting online with them that gets captured and becomes a piece of knowledge for somebody else to use again. But more importantly, the more the amount of knowledge increases, the more important that the system is smart enough to help the learner understand what's relevant to him. If I'm faced with 5 books, I can usually ask somebody or make a choice myself on which ones are worth it for me when I walk into the company. When I'm faced with 2,000 groups and 10,000 classes and 50,000 pieces of content and 6,000 blogs, how do I even figure out what I need? So the systems have to be substantially more intelligent, and that's what's being embedded into systems today. More and more, the systems form a profile of the individual. They know what organizations they work in, what products they work on, what processes they're part of, but also as the system gets used, their weaknesses, their interests, who may be working with them. Same things that you've seen on, say, Facebook or LinkedIn. Here are people you may want to connect to. There's algorithms that figure those out. Well, you know what? In the same way, these systems now take the same technology and say, the same way Amazon says, here's another book that you might want to read, the systems now say, because you work in this job, in this location, doing this thing, you should definitely be in these groups. You should definitely be connected to these workspaces. You should definitely be doing these certifications, but you may also want to follow the following experts, and it may be good for you to track the following additional recommended groups. The systems have to be like that. They have to focus down on the individual, and the neat thing is, because you focus down on individuals and it's built around sharing, even more things, more interesting things happen. So what happens is, because these technologies came from an internet background that was built around people sharing across the globe with no boundaries, everybody's a contributor. The word flips. It's not us just teaching out. We will produce the content, we will send it to you. Now, we will decide what is worth you for your time to understand. It changes. These systems suddenly make it possible to co-opt everybody. In fact, it is a requirement that sharing and contribution has to happen, otherwise people will not engage with it. I have to be able to contribute something worthwhile. I want to know the stuff I need to know. I want to be able to ask it of the right person then, there and at that time. Salesperson going to a call, it happens to us all the time. We have a group called the Sales Lounge, evolved over time, sort of bottom up. The salespeople started organizing themselves around the group. Salesperson anywhere in the world is going into an opportunity, say in automotive. It's very, very, very normal to say, I'm competing with so-and-so competitor in the automobile industry. Have any of you guys seen anything? And overnight, I've seen links go by. Here is a recording of the session that I used when I did the virtual session for Volvo Trucks last week. This is our competitive silver bullet that was put out last week. And here are 3 references for customers that you can connect to if you need to. And stuff like that just flows magically into this place. Is that formal learning? Of course not. Is that learning that's essential? Absolutely. It's critical. It's delivered. It's delivered in real-time response times. As Kavita also pointed out, you've seen the response time shrink. And you know what? It didn't have a formal trainer whose job it was to provide those answers. This is how solution consultants at Saba today get ramped up. We're a global organization. We have executive sales offices around the world. It's just an individual with a laptop working in a territory. how are they supposed to connect to the organization? Heck, who do they ask in the next cubicle? There is no next cubicle. How do they even know who to connect to? This is what makes suddenly nobody is alone in the crowd anymore. Everybody is connected to the portions of the organization that are relevant because the systems automatically did it, and because everybody is contributing, those barriers are gone. The conversations happen all the time, and the organization flattens itself. We actually as managers have visibility into what's going on. What are the same questions everybody is asking 10 times over? You know what? I know I've got to get something out, and often that something out may just take the form of a 2-page PowerPoint. Because we've seen that question come by a little too often. When it used to be hidden in email, I had no visibility whatsoever. I don't have to wait for my learning department to form that content, turn it into formal learning, and push it out. My learning department taps into the same stuff to look at what they're asking, what our people are asking, and what the customers are asking. And from that, we do evolve knowledge-based articles, we evolve formal content, we evolve self-help videos, we evolve job aids, and they're all done on the fly and replaced on the fly as they turn out to be, dead or useless, or they drop down in the ratings. The most important thing, by having these technologies on, a couple of things happen. I don't know, how many of you are using an LMS today? Fantastic. How often do people log into your LMS? Twice a year, around the compliance deadline. Come on, I sell LMSs, I get it. Okay, let's not be shy here. Same thing used to happen to us. We had, our Saba for Saba initiative for years. We would all log in around the compliance deadline as well. Ever since we put the social technologies in place, this is an always-on application. This is the primary source for people, for information of every sort. It's their window to company information everywhere. It's that information. It's where they get learning. It's where competitive information arrives. It is where they ask their questions. It is where they get their formal training. It's where they watch the company, the CEO's message online. This is where they collaborate in their groups. This is where they ideate and decide what goes up or down. So the level of engagement that we see now is just ridiculously high, and most important, what happens is we don't have to worry about trying to crunch a huge amount of training up front in an induction program. Training becomes continuous. People absorb what they do. We do an induction. But we can now focus on more long-run topics, company culture, where we really position in the world, and we don't have to worry about the tactical stuff, because that gets delivered continuously as people need it and as we refine it. Let's face it, marketing messages have to be continuously evolved for every theater, every month, every quarter, as things change. Services methodologies have to get better, competitive information has to keep changing, product launches lead to a whole new slew of activities. Every time we do a new release, what's new in the release? What to tell the customers? Why is this better than the old one? Why is this better than the competition? That has to be brought out to a global workforce. We do that, that has to be a continuous operation. We used to have huge lags or big holes. Now we don't. We simply do webinars every week. Marketing runs formal webinars, product management runs formal webinars, and people have that information. If you couldn't attend, it doesn't matter. You can watch it whenever you like because they're always in the same place. And more importantly, you can watch them wherever you are, even if you're at the airport and you just want to watch it on a mobile device. Just plug in the little earphone and watch the live session if you like. Company meetings are run that way. We lose nothing. And so learning becomes a continuous process. And the net result is people learn faster. They have access to more information than we could ever formally teach. And frankly, eventually we're only about 1,000 people company. And our training department is focused on teaching customers. Who else got time for the inside cost center guys? We just didn't have the resources to do it. Now suddenly, learning is continuous. People get ramped up dramatically, and wherever there are any holes, they just ask somebody. The whole organization is sitting in the next cubicle. Kavit also touched on this. These systems cross organizational boundaries. Very importantly, more and more, as the velocity of business is increasing, competitiveness is increasing, more and more of our businesses require us to not only keep our employees up to speed, but our value chains up to speed. our franchisees, our distributors, our field engineers, our field sales force, our loan agents, as the case may be. Any and all people that are involved with actually making our products get to market or service them reliably, whether it's a pharmaceutical rep carrying a bag. These systems, the needs are identical. It's just that with the old tooling, we couldn't focus on those guys. Now we can. If I want to go nationwide and I have to run 2 lakh insurance agents and I have to ramp them up, yes, it's important to get them e-learning and make sure they're tested, but then it's equally important to follow that up with a knowledge base and an area where they can come in and ask the question that didn't get answered, or they didn't even know they had to ask until they try to sell the next policy. It can't be just one way. There has to be this continuous process. And you know what? These technologies are easy to deploy. They deploy whether inside the company or beyond freely. More importantly, they're more and more, unlike a Facebook or a LinkedIn, they're being built with industrial strength security built around them, so you can partition them to whatever makes sense for your organization. We run a customer community, we run a partner community, and we run obviously our internal employee systems, they run the same system. It's easy to partition, but that's why we didn't go out to Facebook or LinkedIn. We don't have no control over that data. We don't know who's seeing it, and we actually have certain fiduciary responsibilities that don't allow us to put certain data out there at all onto the public systems. So we can now safely track all of these things across these boundaries, and it's no problem. So social learning collapses, not so much social learning, but the social technologies expand our arsenal substantially, allow us to collapse these boundaries, allow us to make learning a continuous experience, make it a bite-sized and it's there when you need it experience. They allow us to co-opt everybody, all subject matter experts as contributors. They allow us to deliver anywhere in the world, anytime, at the pace that the individual needs, and more importantly, they're smart enough to know what the individual often needs, and so the recommendation engines, technologies that are used in other contexts are also being brought to bear. It allows you to measure better, it allows you to do analytics better. Am I done with time, I think? I think I'm going to stop here. Great, thank you so much.